thank you for joining us in the Power Hour today. For those of you who wait for Monday morning to hear Bob Chapman, well, he is here. And we do appreciate the fact that you have an interest outside the normal, let's say, agenda of television and normal radio to come aboard and find out what's really going on within the financial sector. And I don't know that anybody knows right now, but if anybody does know, the closest to that is going to be Bob Chapman, who is the editor of the International Forecaster newsletter. He joins us every Monday morning to make sense of all of this. Thank you, Bob, for joining us on the Power Hour today.
Well, thank you for having me again, and I really enjoy being here.
Hey, Bob, I want to jump in there. Just before the last break, we were playing a clip from Alan Keyes, and I wanted you to hear this and comment.
I heard it all.
Oh, you did? Well, I didn't play it all.
And it's in the next,
That's okay.
It's in the next forecaster, and
okay.
I agree with him, of course. And in reference to your commentary about Glenn Beck, yes, he blames the government, and as you rightly pointed out, it's really the people who control government who should be the targets of what he's talking about. Second of all, he talks about the bubbas getting ready to roll, and no such thing is any evidence as yet. And thirdly, that is a major network, and that is controlled by the very people he's obliquely attacking.
Well, see, this is one of the things that I was
just... What's that?
I was just going to say, this is one of the things I was discussing with some friends of mine this past weekend who also saw this. You know, this entire, see, I see this as a setup. It's a setup here. They know that there's going to be a revolution. They know there's going to be civil unrest. They know that there's going to be pitting the police against the people, military, et cetera, et cetera. This is what they want. This is what we've been screaming about for the past, 8 years on this broadcast, how the law enforcement and the military is being set up as cannon fodder when, in fact, the real culprits are going to be sitting in their glass towers smoking cigars and sipping champagne while they watch all the people destroy themselves. And then when it's all done and the country has gone into absolute ruin, then they'll offer their solution because of the chaos that we've all suffered through. And, of course, we're looking at their fruition, if you will, of their new world order, their corporate-controlled biochip system of money, of medicine, of security, all of it, all packaged into one. Do you see the same thing that I'm seeing here, Bob?
Yeah, it's a setup, and there's no question. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been allowed to bring it on the program. And so it's disinformation. It's to get you aware that the government is a problem, not the people behind it, that there are millions of menacing bubbas out there. And I get news from Mr. Beck. Joyce and Dave and Bob are not bubbas. We have very high IQs. And so that's more disinformation, making people think that the great unwashed dumb out there are ready to attack the government, and that's not the case. And what they're trying to do here is initialize. They're trying to get something going, and that'll give them the excuse to put on martial law.
Well, this is why I wanted to point out this whole issue about them calling the scenario the Bubba effect was condescending right off the bat by labeling anybody who has the brains to sit down, read the Constitution, read the writings of our founding fathers, understand the philosophy behind the words written in the Bill of Rights, why they were penned. Anybody that can think, like you said, we're not Bubbas out here. As a matter of fact, it's the bubbas that have been recruited into the military that will simply follow orders because they have no ability to think for themselves. It's the pot calling the kettle black.
Exactly. And you're right. And it's good to examine this. And it's funny you bring it up that I just wrote relatively the same thing above the caption for the tape, which we just put in as a link into Wednesday's issue of the International Forecaster.
Very good.
So it did not go unnoticed. One of the things that we have to do, we work 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and occasionally play golf, and we're on top of everything, just like you are.
Well, I believe that you are. It's very obvious that you're on top of all of this information. Let's move to the Citigroup situation, because with Citigroup's shares of stock now having dropped 92% this past year, we are now going to reward them with more money and the nationalization of the banks, allegedly, possibly, might. Let's talk about what that means, because I'd like to know your take on that, and what's the implication of nationalizing the banks?
Well, first of all, we recommended a short in the International Forecaster on Citigroup at $48 a share. Last time I saw it, it was $163. So those people who bet that Citigroup was going to go down at our recommendation have made about 95% on their investment if they were not leveraged. And a lot of people who use margin are leveraged. Anyway,
explain to the uninvestor what that just meant.
Okay, I say to you, Joyce, I want you to sell Citigroup at $48 a share, and you say, well, I don't own it. Well, you don't have to own it, Joyce. All you have to do is borrow the stock from somebody else and say you want to sell it. You're not really selling the stock you're borrowing. That's held in the brokerage house in a margin account. But what you do is sell something that you essentially don't own, hoping it will go down. And in this case, it did. So if you buy the security back at 163, they call it covering the short. In other words, you consummate your trade by having sold and then buying back. And the difference between 48 and 163 is your profit. And so the subscribers on that issue, now we've got about 30 issues like that. I mean, the people who are on the short side of the market via the International Forecaster have made a fortune. But leaving that aside, let me tell you what they're up to here. The Citigroup, Morgan, Goldman Sachs, many others are shareholders in the Fed Reserve. What the Fed and those banks are doing is deliberately have done and are doing what they are doing in order to consolidate the biggest banks in the United States into one or two banks and making it easier in the future to implement world banking, world government, world currency. This is what they're up to. And as Dave said earlier, these TARP funds, where did they go? They didn't go to the public. They went to the banks. Yeah, in the future, to implement world banking, world government, world currency. This is what they're up to. And as Dave said earlier, these TARP funds, where did they go? They didn't go to the public. They went to the banks. Who sent the money to the banks? The Treasury and the Federal Reserve, in behalf of the American people. So the American people are bailing out the banks, so to speak, to keep them in business. They're all bankrupt. Most of the major brokerage firms are bankrupt. Many of the insurance companies are bankrupt. They're all going to be rolled into one or two or three or four entities so that they're easy to control under corporate fascism. And then, of course, they'll be melded with the same scenario that'll happen in England and on the continent, and then after that, Asia, etc. And this is what they're up to. This is a forced consolidation. And incidentally, it's all privately owned because the Fed is privately owned.
Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how many times they refer to the Fed and say, well, the Fed needs to take more action here. The Fed needs to do this, needs to do that. And in reality, the Fed is nothing more than a private bank owned by many foreign bankers. Well, what is going to be the implication? Let's say they do nationalize the Citibank to the tune of 40%, give them more money to reward them for having lost more money last year and mismanagement or whatever happened. I don't know and I can't say. But what is going to be the implication of nationalizing Citibank? What will that mean to me and to you?
Well, first of all, it's privatizing, not nationalizing. They're trying to, again, give you disinformation and lead you into a path which is a blind end. It's really the consolidation of private power. It's not going to have a great effect at the beginning on the average person. We've been telling our subscribers to only have 6 months operating capital in banks, in other words, to pay your bills, and if it cost you $3,000 a month, let's say you'd have $36,000 in the bank, and that's it. No CDs, and then you stretch that into no large cash value insurance policies or annuities, no money in the stock market except perhaps for gold and silver shares, and of course you want to own gold and silver coins with the money that you're not keeping in the bank.
Okay, but still, I don't get a picture, though, of what this nationalization or, as you say, privatization is going to mean to us individually.
Well, I think in the final analysis, what they'll try to do is default on U.S. debt